الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Assalamu alaikum. It's my honor to start this khutbah on the call of my friend and teacher Nazir's Azan. Thank you, Jazakallah khair. Allow me in this khutbah to dwell on some advice from Rumi. He says, sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. He is telling us not to let anything come in the way of a fascinating discovery that life has to offer. Bewilderment propels us on the path of discovery, whether scientific or spiritual, and moves us closer to the truth. He's asking us to free our hearts of dogmas, false assumptions, generalizations, literalizations, and of course, intellectual arrogance. He's asking us to dive in the sea of his science, and he tells us that divers have no need for shoes. In other words, a discoverer has no need for dogmas. So let us today, as fellow travelers, sell some cleverness and buy some bewilderment. Let us aspire to get a scent of the truth of the unfathomable reality. I'm first going to try to illustrate false assumptions and generalizations through a story which I read as a young man, so I can't source it. But this story changed my mindset, and I hope that you can find some use for it. There was this plantation owner that used to work his slaves very hard on his plantation. The slaves would work hard, he would rake in the money. There was only one problem. He had to stand there by the fields and oversee the work of the slaves. So one day he thought that he can probably change the equation here. He summoned all the slaves. He had a false glass eye. He took his eye out, placed it on the ledge, and told the slaves that in my absence, this eye will tell me everything of what was happening here. So he put his eye down, he took off, came back at sundown, and he saw all the slaves were working very hard. He did the same thing the next day, same result. The next day, same result. One day he came in earlier. As he walked up to the fields, he saw all the slaves sleeping, taking a siesta. When he went to the ledge where the eye was, someone had placed a hat on the eye. Now, the false conclusion is that the slaves were easily fooled. But the not so obvious truth is that the slaves were as smart and logical as anyone else. They simply assumed that the eye could see, and then they did the next intelligent, logical thing, which is to cover it up. Similarly, the master assumed that he was superior, and he ended up fooling himself. So the point I'm trying to make here is that logic, sound logic, builds its assumptions, or builds its logic, its foundations on assumptions. For our logic to sustain itself, our assumptions must be unassailable. To be humble and to be ready to learn, we must be ready and willing to challenge our own assumptions. And often, learning will require that we first unlearn. The contemplation of the physical reality, the reality in which we live in, is in itself a humbling experience. Isaac Newton, the famous physicist, fascinated by his contemplation of the cosmos, wrote, "This most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only have proceeded from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being." That was back in the 17th and 18th century when physics was still physical. Today's physics has the abstraction of spirituality and a wide open allowance for what I call a spiritual cause. From a spiritual perspective, there is this outer hosted physical reality, the Zahir. There is another underlying reality, spelled with a capital R, which is the inner reality, the Batin. Let us call this the spiritual cause of the Zahir. We shall refer to this spiritual cause many times again in this khutbah. The Zahir invites us to its discovery because it bears signs and pointers to the Batin. Today, contemplating the Zahir, we find out that the distinction between matter and energy is no more. That the line between wave and particle does not exist. Our physical reality is a grand illusion. We stand steady and stationary in a spinning planet which speeds around the sun. Never mind that the sun orbits along the Milky Way, and the Milky Way itself speeds at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Even more intriguing, is that we reference our position by moving stars. Let's take notice of this divine qasam. La uqsimu bi mawaqi'in nujum wa innahu laqasmun law ta'lamuna azim. I swear by the instances of the stars, and it is one awe-inspiring oath if you knew. One aspect of the awe is that the stars we see in the sky are not even there. Their light, which makes them visible to us, takes millions of light years to reach us. Though we use them for navigation, they have been long gone from the position we see them in. The sky we see today is what it was eons ago. Only Allah, who transcends time and space, knows the present position of the stars and as to whether or not they even exist. In our present, we are simply seeing a distant past of the stars. The further a moving object, the slower it seems to move. The stars are so distant from us that they appear to be stationary. Time and not space defines for us the physical boundaries of the universe. Light from the outer distances has simply not reached us. Thinking man has witnessed illusions since the advent of time. Lightning and thunder originate in the same place, yet we will experience lightning first and thunder later. So our serial experience actually flows from a single event. While the batin transcends time, the zahir is hosted through a constancy of change. And change requires time. Without time, there's no motion. Without motion, there are no forms, no physical cause, no effect, no questions, no answers to follow, no happening, no learning. You would acquire no pain, no healing, no trial, and no sabr. Time transforms us and allows us to acquire consciousness, which makes the future imaginable and the now meaningful. Allah has His subtle ways in which He hosts our changing reality. He spins the night into day. He transforms coal to diamond. He transforms the bitterness of a fruit to its sweetness. And He transforms an unremarkable drop into an intelligent creature. Kullu man alayha fan wa yabqa wajhu rabbika zul jalali wal ikram. Only Allah is the unchanging reality. He is the truth, al-haq, because the truth never changes. Everyone who is on it is to perish, while forever is to remain the being of your Rabb, owner of all majesty and munificence. Contemplate what I said with these attributes. Allah is Al-Awwal and Al-Akhir, the first and the last, transcending time. Al-Khabir and Al-Alim, the all-aware of what happens inside of time and the all-knowing, transcending time. Al-Zahir and Al-Batin, the outwardly manifested and the spiritual cause behind manifestation. So if the Zahir is a pointer to the Batin, one is entitled to ask, as many people ask, why did a sincere discoverer like Stephen Hawking die an atheist? So the question was, why did a sincere discoverer like Stephen Hawking die an atheist? I think he died an atheist because the religion he grew up in, the religion he knew, was too dogmatic. He was brought up in a Christian household, and perhaps the dogma of Trinity was too much for him. But do consider, he was not a mushrik. He had slayed all false gods and diligently cleared the first part of the kalima, La ilaha. Like Hazrat Ibrahim, he rejected every changing form and phenomena. He sadly did not embrace illallah, probably because he never encountered this dogma-free definition of Allah, the Supreme Cause. La tudrikuhu al-absar, wa huwa yudrikul absar, wa huwa latiful khabir. No vision can comprehend him, whereas he comprehends all visions. He is unfathomable, all aware. Stephen Hawking was probably never told that Allah is al-Baqi, he who remains when all inquiry has exhausted and all assailable beliefs are tossed out. I am quite convinced that he rejected religion, as many young people do, because of the excessive dogmas that get dragged into religion. Do not take me wrong. Some dogmas are necessary. It is necessary, for example, to have conformity on the direction of Qibla. Otherwise, we will have chaos in our mosques. We do it for a consensus amongst ourselves. This is an important matter, but it is an outer matter. It is an exterior matter. Now, if I tell you that your salat at Holiday Inn last night, all by yourself, was improper because your Qibla was misinformed, the dogma has overreached and encroached into the essence. The essence is that you stood before Allah. Laysal birra an tawallu wajuhakum qibla al-mashriqi wal-maghribi walakinna al-birra man amana billahi wal yawmil akhir wa malaikati wa kitabi wa nabiyyina wa atal mala ala hubbihi zawil qurba wal yatama wal masakina wa ibn sabil was sa'ilina wa fir riqab وَأَقِمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ أُولَئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَأُولَئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. This is the point that the Quran makes about the interior essence. That you turn your faces in the direction of the east or the west is not the essence of reverence. But whoever believes in Allah and the last day and the angels and the timeless words of scripture and the prophets and gives of his wealth for the love of him to those who are close to him by right of kinship, the orphans, the needy, the wayfarer, those who ask, and for the freeing of the slaves, and he who is anchored in prayer and gives zakah is the one with reverence. And those who keep and fulfill their promises whenever they have made them, and persevere through tribulation and hardship and in times of peril. It is they who are authentic, and it is they who are truly conscious of God. Let me give you another example. We close ranks between each other in a saf to show our solidarity and brotherhood. But to say to close your ranks because shaitan will occupy the spaces, that is a dogma. So alhamdulillah, between the spaces that you have between yourselves today, there is no shaitan, inshallah. Rumi, an inspired lover of the Quran, asks, and I would imagine he read this ayah, he asks, if you are in the Kaaba, which way will you turn? In the previously quoted verse, Al-Bir was about giving for the love of him. To love him, we must first be ready to part with the worldly. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. Not will you attain to reverence of God until you spend in alms from that which you love. Here an outward act is conceived and measured inwardly. Love, or call it sincerity, is when the heart desires no less for another than what it desires for itself. It is our basis of love, sincere love, that Allah transforms us from Islam to Iman to Ihsan. The outer surrender in word, the inner surrender in thought, and the state of attachment to Him, or call it falling in love with Him. In our journey through time, we are to learn that empathy for fellow beings equals loving Him. True love is of a single strain. And this is not some feel-good Sufi talk. This is the Bushra of 76, 8-9. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. And they feed the needy and the orphans and the prisoners their daily food for the love of Him. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. Saying, we feed you only for the face of Allah. We do not desire any form, we do not desire any return from you, nor any gratitude. Did you notice the beautiful figurative construct, Wajhullah, face of Allah, countenance of Allah, being of Allah? We dare not literalize it. How can we? Do you want to? Why would you want to? فَأَيْنَمَا تَوَلُّوا فَسَمَّهَا وَجْهِ اللَّهِ. It will take us a lifetime to contemplate this figurative construct. Wherever you turn, there assuredly is the face of Allah, or the being of Allah, or the countenance of Allah. Our being requires no cleverness. Ghaib is not of the five senses, it is of another sense. Submission to Allah is a sustained state of being on a straight and timeless path. And the good news, the Bushra here is that we are not alone on this path. Hazrat Hud says, Inna Rabbi ala siratin mustaqim. Verily my Rabb is upon the straight and timeless path. The one within us, closer to our jugular vein, is there to steady us along Sirat al-Mustaqim. The figurative forces us to contemplate. No need to literalize the contemplative. We cannot put ghaib in a box. The Quran accounts for ghaib being beyond our conception. For example, when the Quran says Al-Qariya, it follows up immediately with what is Qariya. And the answer shatters any dogma that we could frame. Al-Qariya, Mal-Qariya, Vama Adraka Mal-Qariya, Yawma Yakunu Nasu Kal Farashil Mabsus, Watakuna Jibalu Kal Ainil Manfush, فَأَمَّا مَنْ سَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينَهُ فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ فَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينَهُ فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. The Qariya. What is the Qariya? What will tell you what the Qariya is? A day when humans are like scattered moths, and the mountains are to be like fluffed wool. Then as for one whose scales are heavy, he shall be in a satisfying existence. And as for one whose scales are light, his claimant is an abyss. Qariya is the perspective where substance is no longer material. Mass has vanished. The mountains are done standing. We are weightless like moths, more akin to being spiritual than bodily. And these scales here They measure aspirations and deeds, not physical mass. Our physical laws have expired. How can we possibly literalize? Selling our cleverness would mean that we drink from the Arabic Quran and keep coming for more. The Quran is complex for those who want to craft rules. It is promised to be easy for those who seek peace through his zikr. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِذِكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. We indeed have made the Quran easy for the remembrance of God. So then, is there any committed to God's remembrance? The verse seems to be saying, come in earnest. Leave the rest to Al-Hadi. That is the unfathomable ijaz of the Quran. The Quran will make us, but first it must break us. It will break us to rid us of our cleverness, and then inshallah it will make us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين. Knowledge or consciousness is progressive, day at a time, moment to moment, layer upon layer. The designated prayer of the Prophet tells us, Rabbi zidni ilman, my Rabb, grow me in knowledge. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi, ya ayyuhallazina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. At the root of all causes is the spiritual cause. Before Hadrat Adam, there was a spiritual cause. Before the Big Bang, if you will, there was a spiritual cause. And Rumi says, how should the foam fly without the wave? How should the dust rise to the zenith without the wind? Since you have seen the dust, now see the wind. Since you have seen the foam, now see the ocean of creative energy. Because Allah's knowledge is always complete, the spiritual cause transcends time. A hadith of the Prophet attributed to Abu Huraira, compiled in Jami at-Tirmidhi, has people bewildered. In it, the Prophet says, I was a prophet while Adam was between being soul and body. I'll say it again. I was a prophet while Adam was between being soul and body. Is this timelessness not attributing to the spiritual cause outside of the prison of time? In the same way, Hazrat Isa may be understood as the spiritual cause for Hazrat Maryam. Likewise, the moment of now, chosen for us, is the spiritual cause why our parents met. It is also the spiritual cause why revelation came. It came for us. Is that not enough reason for us to express gratitude to Him now? The spiritual cause is the Rahmah of our Rahman, the mercy of the source of mercy. Even if we may not always understand it, Allah reminds us twice in the Quran with these words of open-ended scope. Kataba ala nafsihi rahmah. He has decreed mercy upon himself. Mercy, therefore, has to be everywhere and in everything. Life is merciful. Death is merciful. So are heaven and hell. And of course, that leads to the popular question: why would a merciful God have hell? This objection reflects the objector's failure to accept personal accountability. When the Surgeon General publishes ghastly pictures of charred lungs, charred with smoking, and he publishes them, no one accuses him of being incompassionate. When Allah brings home the agony of Jahannam in our here and now, is that not a loving and merciful Rabb warning us of the consequences of our free will? Or consider the logic of the shade and the sun. Alam tara ila rabbika kaifa madda zilla law sha'a la ja'alahu sakinan summa ja'alna shamsa alayhi dalila. Have you not turned your sight unto your Rabb's ways, how he has spread the shade? If he had willed it, he could have rendered it to be still. Every advancing moment, we place the sun over it as its guide. How wondrously liberating to look at the shade as the gift of the sun. The very thing we seek refuge from, the hot sun is itself the guide of the shade. Indeed, wherever there is hardship, there is ease. Such is the mercy of divine creation. وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلَا يَئُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. When the intellect cannot grasp the magnitude of the Almighty King's throne and words fail, there is no recourse except to fall on all four, eyes closed, head to the ground, and join the expression of truth. Subhana Rabbi al-Ala. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim. Aqimus salam.